Hi, I'm Lindsey, and I'm talking with medtech industry leaders on how they change lives for a better world.
The inventions and technologies are fascinating, and so are the people who work with them.
There was a period of time where I realized fundamentally my job was to go hang out with really smart people that are saving lives and then do work that would help them save more lives.
I got into the business to save lives, and it is incredibly motivating to work with people who are in that same business, saving or improving lives.
What better industry than where I get to wake up every day and just save people's lives?
These are extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, and this is The Leading Difference. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Leading Difference podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey, and I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Kelley Satoski. Kelley is the co-founder and CEO of Pelva Health, a pelvic health startup on a mission to make intimacy pain-free for women with chronic vaginal and vulvar pain. All right, well, welcome, Kelley, to the show. I'm so excited that you are here today.
Yeah, this is amazing. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, would you mind just starting by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you to medtech?
Yeah. So we were talking before the show about you being in dance and all your different ventures. I also have a similar background in the arts, so I didn't really anticipate starting a med tech company. That was probably the furthest thing from my mind. But I did grow up in a very entrepreneurial family. So I went to school for art and design, wanted to do my own thing, wanted to start my own startup. So I feel like that was always something in the back of my mind. But we started this pelvic health company because me and my husband, Doug, had a condition called vaginismus, which basically is a problem that keeps people from being able to have sex due to chronic vaginal and vulvar pain. And so we struggled with that for about 10 years. And then after seeking treatment for 5 years, not seeing any relief, we decided, okay, there has to be a better solution. And so that was really the catalyst for starting Pelva Health and for getting into med tech. And we're the perfect duo for it. My husband's a biomedical engineer, has worked in many companies, has worked at biomaterials before. And then me with my background in art, design, entrepreneurial spirit, and that really fits us really well. So we're excited to be a part of the community.
Oh, that is exciting. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing a little bit about the background. So that just sparks so many questions. And I love the fact that you two have both you've got the creative side, you've got the business sense, you've kind of married them together. So tell me a little bit about what was this journey like for you of going through this really painful, difficult experience and frustrating. I can only imagine probably spending a lot of money on trying to find solutions, not finding the answers that you're seeking. So how did you go from, gosh, this can't just be us, other people have to be dealing with this too, to let's figure out the solution? Because that's a huge leap.
Oh, yeah, definitely. People are always surprised that 75% of women have pain with sex. 75%. And nearly 30% will struggle chronically over 6 months. In fact, most will suffer 2 to 7.5 years without relief. These are massive numbers. This is huge groups of people. And this is not just affecting women, this is affecting couples. This is affecting, like you mentioned, finances. I spent over $10,000 in out of pocket treatment for these conditions. I saw over 5 providers. And then the impact, really for me, the worst impact is the one that it can have on your mental health, on the mental health of your partner and your guys' intimacy and your relationship. It gets you fired up because it's such a complex issue that doesn't have a lot of research around it, does not have a lot of innovation around it. So something that really catapults us into trying to innovate in this space was personally a lot of dissatisfaction with the options I had. So, for women with vaginismus specifically, one of the most common prescribed therapies is called dilator therapy. So it's basically a bunch of dilators that are of different sizes, and you basically do exposure therapy to stretch the vaginal canal, improve elasticity, and also to try to get over the psychological fear around the pain that you experience with sex. But it's got incredibly low compliance rates. We're talking like 75% of women won't comply because of the emotional turmoil, the amount of commitment that's required, the slow results that they see, and often a lack of translation to sexual intimacy, you know,
Mm.
at
Mhm.
all. And so part of me was frustrated with, there's a lot of companies and it's good that we improve dilators. But to me, if women can't comply to something, or if a user can't comply, or if it's emotionally exhausting and it's causing these problems, then we need to think of a different solution. Like, surely something better exists. And so it was important to us that we didn't just create a better dilator.
Mhm.
We wanted to figure out, okay, how can we prevent pain immediately? What could we create to give people relief so that tomorrow they can go out and enjoy intimacy in the way that they want without pain? Tomorrow, not in 6 months after therapy, like tomorrow. So that's what we have set out to do. And just from that personal experience is really what catapult us into doing this startup.
Wow. Wow, amazing. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing the statistics too. I mean, that is yeah, I think what's crazy is there are so many of these kinds of stories that are emerging more and more, especially for women of, oh, well, so many of us are affected by these things and there just hasn't been the research or the money or time, who knows, devoted to it. So, kudos to you and your husband for starting this company and trying to solve something, but also to your point of not just 6 months, 1 year, whatever down the line, but hey, let's actually solve this tomorrow. So as you've started in on this amazing adventure, which I'm sure has your, shares of entrepreneurial ups and downs, but
Oh, sure.
what are some of the exciting milestones that you've achieved so far? And what are you looking forward to?
Oh, yes. So many good things. We're an early startup, right? So we've done some proof of concept studies with some really incredible results. We are heading into a pilot study at the Center for Vulvovaginal Disorders with 10 women with provoked vestibulodynia, which is another term for basically having some pain around the entrance of the vagina with any sort of penetration. So, getting some of that real data and feedback and seeing that we are actually creating something that is helping is really exciting. So, I'd say that's the biggest milestone that I'm most excited about.
Of course. Well, and proof of concept is such a great thing to really go, okay, yes, here we are. We can go
Mhm.
ahead and get this going. So yeah. So, okay. So then you're going to do this pilot study with these 10 women. And then after you get the results of that, what happens next in this journey?
Yes. So, hopefully, that pilot data helps inform, do we need to make any more design changes? Is there anything else we need to be considering before we fully lock the design? Don't make any more changes. This is what's going to market type of thing. And then start preparing for FDA approval because we are going through the FDA. There's so many wellness. You can't see I'm doing quotation marks,
Yeah.
wellness,
Yeah.
vaginal wellness products that
Right.
exist on the market that you would be shocked by the
Oh,
amount of products that are
mm,
on the market but did not go through the FDA. But we really do want to give women a product that's done the work, that's done the safety testing, that's done the clinical data, that's really has efficacy behind it so that we
mm.
give women the best. That matters to me a lot. So we're going to go through FDA approval and then it'll be market launch once the FDA says yes, which
Yes.
hopefully they will.
Of course, yes. Rooting for you, absolutely. So, okay, that is so exciting. So backing up a little bit, when you first started this, I know you've had this entrepreneurial sort of background and mindset to begin with, but the actual reality of starting a business is definitely still a learning curve, no matter how prepared you feel
Totally.
like you might be.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear about your experience as an entrepreneur and leading a company and in, going from here's this here's this idea and now let's make it happen. So how was that transition for you personally as a leader?
Oh man, yes, definitely starting one, an FDA regulated device company, and two, a startup that typically raises venture capital funds. So there's certain things that come with that are a little bit different, maybe than some other types of startups that exist. It's definitely a learning curve. And so when we first started Pelva, we were so fortunate to be connected to the Purdue University. That's where my husband went to school. And so they have a whole program for alumni to basically join their incubator and learn all the basics of startup. And they don't take equity, they don't do anything with your IP. It's like purely to help support alumni startups in the Purdue ecosystem. So that was the most transformative experience for me because it just thrusts you into the basics of doing a startup, of doing a medtech startup, of doing customer discovery, and all that's required of that. And then surrounding myself with so many incredible advisors, mentors. I'm a firm believer you can't do it by yourself. And so, I'd rather be one of those people that just jumps in and then knows that I have people to support me rather than waiting till I have it all just perfect before I go. And I couldn't do it without that support system and those people that helped us in the beginning. So helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And getting to learn from people who've been there, done that, and have that perspective and just even the experience of, oh, here's a couple things to watch out for or
Yep.
whatnot can, yeah, make such a difference. And then, you have had such an interesting career also.
Yeah.
You haven't just been, not that it's just at all, you are quite the entrepreneurial leader now as well. But in the past, you've also had a really interesting trajectory. So I'm just
Mhm.
curious, can you tell us a little bit about even your career before this and maybe how
Right.
it's helped influence what you're doing now?
Yeah. That's oh man, I've done quite a few things. So I went to art school and I worked with different nonprofits and businesses, did some freelance work for a while. And that was helpful. I'm really used to a blank canvas and making something out of nothing. And that's like quite literally what we do is like, okay, there's nothing here.
Mhm.
What are we going to do? We just got to start. And so I'm used to that overwhelming feeling where it just feels like so much, but you just have to jump in. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that I've carried with me from that time is just making something out of nothing, thinking about things outside the box. I think so often we get, so in our little boxes and ways that things have to be done. And I feel like that's very limiting most of the time. Sometimes it's good, but most of the time, I think we could all do a little dose of new perspective and seeing things from maybe a different view. So that's a very applicable part of what I learned there. Then after I sought treatment for about 3 years, I started to feel the itch and this was we were thinking about starting Pelva, but we weren't fully in or anything like that. But I was like, I need to interface with more people that are struggling with this. I'm starting to get interested in women's health because of this problem. So I actually quit the work I was doing and I became a postpartum doula and I started taking patient intakes at a pelvic pain clinic in Atlanta, Georgia for about a year. And so this is right before Pelva, actually. I went to Pelva full time. So I probably interfaced and took intakes of over 400 women with chronic pelvic pain and different vulvovaginal disorders for about a year prior to Pelva, which I say too was like a super incredible way to get a foundation of customer discovery before you start a company is to go talk to 400 patients day in and day out. So I also say that was super impactful to really immerse myself around people that are struggling and need a better solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how different things from our past can really translate eventually. And I'm curious for other people, actually, you have such a unique and great perspective. So maybe for other people who have the spark of an idea for something like a medical device, but just, maybe they're not from the industry or they would feel like that's just such a huge next step. what are some pieces of advice you might have for somebody?
That's a great question. It takes a certain personality. I feel like I'm not super risk averse, I guess you should say, in a good way, I think. I think the biggest thing I see people hold up on is I don't have all the exact perfect experience. I need to go and be a manager of people for 5 more years before I'm comfortable being a CEO of a startup. And to me, that feels more limiting than expansive. And I think a better perspective is to sometimes you just have to jump. And just what you can do is make sure you have people around you to carry you through and to help support in areas that you will need help on. You will need help. And so I feel like that's what we did is just the very beginning. Okay, where can we get mentorship? What other femtech, what other medtech leaders exist in the place that we live? We should connect with them. We should tell them our idea and get their feedback.
Yeah.
Um, and then you create this support system that actually makes it easier to step into a space that is new for you because you have support. I'd say that's like the the way to go.
I really like that. That's great advice. And I think there's actually kind of a correlation because I was curious. I was looking through your LinkedIn profile just for fun. I always like to kind of see
Yeah.
what the guests are up to. And one thing that piqued my curiosity was actually your article that you wrote at one point that was replacing fear with curiosity. And
Mm,
there was a beautiful short little article about some ideas for how to do that. And I'm actually curious if you could speak a little to that because I think this is the exact right scenario to apply it to is
mhm.
maybe somebody who's nervous and feeling overwhelmed by the idea, maybe we replace that with curiosity and see where that leads us. So, but I'd love your take
Mm.
on it since this is your thing. Yeah.
I was so wise back then. I think I wrote that article, like, back in 2020 or something. But, no, it is I wrote that at a time where I had just graduated from
Mm,
college,
mhm.
and I was in the arts, right? We talked about this, oh, getting a career in the arts,
Yeah.
it's tough, it's full of unknowns, it's really competitive and competitive for very little pay, and so there's all of these strings attached, and I was just, yeah, feeling pretty insecure about, like, I want to have impact, I want to feel like I have purpose, and I wanna do all these things, but
Mhm.
it's all very unclear and very scary, and having to say yes to different opportunities that, like we said, sometimes feel like they are outside of our realm of expertise or comfort, and I feel like when we can approach things more from a place of curiosity and less out of this quick reactive state, that we can better move through that fear a little bit more, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Instead of being like, "Oh, I don't have enough experience," or "I don't do that," or "That was never on my game plan," or "That's too risky, that's gonna fail," or "Nobody has created a better solution for vaginismus. There's no other
Mm.
solution. So what you guys have put out there, that's not gonna work," or "No one has made a hydrogel like that, so that's not gonna work." Instead, be a little more curious about where do these limiting beliefs come from and are they as set in stone as everyone makes them out to be? Or can we be curious about this and actually maybe they aren't so hard and fast as we thought at first?
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing about that. What I love about the idea behind curiosity too is that it helps because if you're in a place where you're really concerned about trying something new and failing, because that's such a common shared experience for so many people. So if you're in that boat, but you treat it as I'm going to explore this next thing as an exploration, then failure is not even part of an
Yes.
exploration, right? You're just exploring. You're just
Mhm.
curious. So you're going to learn and hey, if you find out that this isn't for me, okay, you go on. Next
And
thing.
I love that. Exactly. Yeah. And I always say too, entrepreneurship and doing a startup in medtech like is not for everyone. Absolutely not. But for those that I guess have the itch, and I feel like you can usually tell who those people are. I always this is a quote actually from my husband, not me, but we always talk about what's the greater risk. The greater risk for us is never going after a greater dream, never doing the things that we want to do never pushing and going after, the greater risk is comfort. The staying in what we feel is the comfort zone, but never going after, that's the greatest risk. And so if you can reframe what's risky for you,
Mm.
is going after your dreams really the greatest risk, or is the risk that you never go after your dreams? That
Yeah.
seems pretty scary to me.
Yes. Yes. Wow. That is really powerful. I love that. That's such a great question to ask yourself, too, because to your point, sometimes it just feels like the risk is this one thing. Like, it's just this one idea you have or the dream you have. And it's not a comparison. I love the comparison. What's the greater risk? Oh, my goodness.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. I'm going to hold on to that
Yeah.
one. Wonderful. So, okay, as you've been going along this journey and you've been talking with these women and other folks that have a shared experience or a similar experience to yours, and you're creating this innovative solution, are there any moments that stand out that just really confirm to you, hey, I am in the right industry at the
Oh,
right time, doing the
yeah.
right thing?
All the time. It's always a thing, at a startup, like talk to your customers, never stop talking to your customers. But for me, I love talking to customers because it continually, day in, day out, reminds me why we're doing this. I had one person literally say to me, "This is the first time I felt hope in 10 years." I've had women that have been divorced over vaginismus, over an inability to experience intercourse, couples on the rocks, tears, like the whole thing. The just feeling hopeless, I think, is a really common theme from the women I talk to. And in fact, we had feedback groups for our product, and I was like, okay, guys, we'll keep you in the loop. We might be doing some clinical trials, some studies in the future. And it's not even been a month, and I already have people messaging me, when's the clinic? I want to be a part of it. So just making sure that you're still doing it. So it's so confirmed the prevalence. And I mentioned the statistics, but the other thing that always confirms to me that this is a real issue is almost every space that I pitch Pelva or talk about Pelva, I always have at least 2 people, men and women, that talk to me afterwards and talk about what they're experiencing with it, which really lines up with the statistics on how many people are struggling. So it's a really big problem.
Yeah. But knowing that you're making an impact and a difference and inspiring hope in folks who don't have that right now,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah. What a
Yeah,
gift. Love
it
that.
is. Yep. And women's
Yeah.
health is all the rage right now. So it is, like you said, is this a good time? This is a fantastic time.
Yeah.
There is no better time, I
Yeah.
think, to
Yeah.
innovate in women's health right now.
Yeah. Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. So, okay. So, pivoting the conversation a little bit just for fun.
Yep.
Imagine that you were to be offered $1 million to teach a masterclass on anything you want. It can be within your industries, which you have several, or it could be something completely different. What would you choose to teach?
Oh. I feel like if we were going to keep this related to Pelva, I would hand that $1 million to my medical team and we'd put out this massive broadcast educating everyone about women's gynecologic health and educate on our anatomy and all of that stuff. I'd put a broadcast out there for everybody. That's very cheeky, but and
I
related to
love it.
Pelva. But you know what?
Hey,
Hey, it's $1 million.
yeah,
Want to do something?
very good. Yeah, and it would be helpful because, gosh, like we've talked about earlier. I mean, I had no idea the staggering statistics, and I'm sure many of us really don't. So just having that awareness and that education and what do we do next and how can we help, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, also, how do you wish to be remembered after you leave this world?
Oh my goodness, going deep. But no, I love it. That's an interesting question. I I want to be remembered for being someone that really went after things and was somebody that also really encouraged people to do what they want to and made that possible. I love big dreamers. So big dreams, always went after it, and was honest a really honest person, really real and kind.
Yeah.
Those things, some good
Yeah.
qualities.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a go-getter is the first thing that popped into my head. So
I love
maybe that's
that.
the one I should go with.
Yeah, I love that. And the way you answered that actually brought to mind, I had a question I meant to ask earlier. Was it difficult for you and or maybe your husband as you're forming this company and you're talking about a very personal your own story? What was that experience like? Was that really hard to get
Oh,
comfortable and used to talking? I just
oh yeah, I lead every pitch that I do telling my story. Like,
yeah.
I say it really quick. I spent over 10 years unable to have intercourse with my husband due to a chronic vulvovaginal pain disorder. And as crazy as that sounds, here's the statistics. I've got it down line by line because it is tricky. It's tricky to talk
Yeah.
about in such a way that others are comfortable. How do I share it in a way that doesn't objectify myself and lose people when I'm trying to really pitch a real company? So it definitely felt like a bit of an art. I'm sharing,
Yeah.
I'm learning how to share my story, but I do remember at the very beginning, I hadn't told really anyone that I was struggling with this, not my family, not, yeah, like no one. And I
Yeah.
remember telling Doug when we decided to start Pelva, am I going to have to start telling people about this? If we're going to start this company, I'm going to have to tell my parents. I'm going to have to, like, yeah, we're putting this out there. And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I bet I just had to make the choice that it was worth it. But the more I talk about it, the more other people talk about their experience, and it ends up actually feeling really good. You end up starting to get more experiences, you feel more supported and less alone. In fact,
Right.
sometimes I wish people would not tell me so much, but they do. Talking to my mother-in-law, too much info.
Mm-mm. Oh, man.
Yeah, you get to create these really safe spaces for
Yeah.
people to also share what they're going through. We need
Yeah.
to talk about it. Yeah.
It's so true. I definitely commend you for that because yeah, that would certainly be uncomfortable for a while, maybe forever. I don't know, but being able and willing to share and be vulnerable to your point, I think is what creates that safe space for other people to say, "Oh my gosh, me too." And how can we change this? How can we band together or at least support each other? So I love that. Thank you for creating those
Yeah.
safe spaces.
Yeah, and I feel like and the other thing that I would say is that I always got a lot of like, "Ooh, be careful. You're gonna run into a ton of pushback and people are gonna be weird." And something I feel like I've decided really early on is to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think, yeah, sex is hard to talk about. Like, it is,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna blame anybody for feeling a little uncomfortable talking about it and in
Yeah.
talking about me
Yeah.
and hearing those really personal stories. So I think the more I've approached it from just a very accepting and less reactive and looking for
Mm.
people to be weird about it or not accepting or not supportive, whatever that energy you project, you almost start to receive. So I've tried to be a little bit more open about it all.
I love that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. So, final question. What is one thing that makes you smile every time you see or think about it?
Oh, oh man. That is an interesting question. But I like it. I would say I was a part of this herb society in Minnesota here, the Minnesota Herb Society, and it's full of the most lovely old ladies. And I am the youngest person there for sure, but they are the most wonderful ladies and the most joyful people to ever be around. So I think whenever I think about them, they make me smile. Just a bunch
I,
of old ladies digging in the dirt and planting herbs. What can't you smile about?
yeah, what's not to love? That's phenomenal. I love it. So cool. Well, oh my goodness, this has been an amazing conversation. And Kelly, just thank you so much for sharing and for being
Yeah.
willing to take the risks, right? And to compare risks and say the greater risk is doing nothing or not chasing after this. And we don't know where it's going to lead, but we're going to try. So
Yes.
thank you for doing that work. I know it's not hard. There are probably days where you're just like, "Whew, what did I do?" but you're doing it.
Yep.
So thank you for bringing this to the world and being open and vulnerable and letting other people be too. I appreciate that.
Of course, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. And we are so honored to be making a donation on your behalf as a thank you for your time today to Save the Children, which works to end the cycle of poverty by ensuring communities have the resources to provide children with a healthy, educational, and safe environment. So thank you so much for choosing that charity to support. We just wish you the most continued success as you work to change lives for a better world. And thanks again for being here today and sharing your expertise with us. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. And if you're feeling as inspired as I am, I would love it if you would share this episode with a colleague or two. And we'll catch you next time.
The Leading Difference is brought to you by Velentium. Velentium is a full-service CDMO with 100% in-house capability to design, develop, and manufacture medical devices from Class 2 wearables to Class 3 active implantable medical devices. Velentium specializes in active implantables, leads, programmers, and accessories across a wide range of indications, such as neuromodulation, deep brain stimulation, cardiac management, and diabetes management. Velentium's core competencies include electrical, firmware, and mechanical design, mobile apps, embedded cybersecurity, human factors and usability, automated test systems, systems engineering, and contract manufacturing. Velentium works with clients worldwide, from startups seeking funding to established Fortune 100 companies. Visit Velentium.com to explore your next step in medical device development.